Guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope all is going good. Now, today we have an immigration debate between Camilla Tominey, a GB News presenter, and Nadia Whittome, a Labour MP for Nottingham, I believe. And they're going to be talking about immigration. The conversation comes after Donald Trump has had a very aggressive stance in relation to immigration, and rightly so. You know, people are taking the mick out of America. They are coming in, and to be fair, it's criminal networks that he's eliminating first, and then he's going to start eliminating everyone else that's there illegally. Obviously, that's a whole conversation to go into, like every single category of people. But his policies have been very aggressive. You know, he's been very robust with his language, and he's followed through with his manifesto when it comes to implementing those policies that he was announcing on whilst he was running against Kamala Harris. So yeah, very aggressive policies, and that's what Europe need as well. Europe need very aggressive policies, you know, because there's been a huge culture change so quick, and that can't happen at these current rates, because what we see is a projection that most natives in Europe, you know, European natives, you know, i.e. German, you know, English, Anglo-Saxon, French, will become a minority in their nations in the next, you know, 50 to 100 years. No one wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that. I believe the people that are indigenous to that land area or have been living there the longest, because when you bring up the word indigenous, they'll say, oh no, someone was there before you. Oh, someone was there before you. They'll always come with that game. So whoever's been living there the longest should be the predominant people there. Very simple. Said it many times. In Mexico, Mexicans. In Congo, Congolese. In South Africa, South Africans. Simple. Done. So yeah, but anyway guys, let's get straight into this. Last thing I'm going to say is Nadia Whittome seems to be concerned with foreign affairs. She seems to be concerned with Trump, and not just from his immigration policy, but she's always talking about him on her Instagram, and she seems to be super concerned with Gaza. You know, your constituents aren't in Gaza. They're in the United Kingdom. You know, put the UK first.
Seen and heard in terms of how the UK should treat illegal immigration.
It doesn't work because if you look at it like this, the ultimate deterrent really is death, isn't it? People are risking their lives to cross the channel.
Although many of them do still take that huge risk.
Well, that's exactly my point. And people are still doing that. And that's because the push factors that are causing people to make those journeys, fleeing war, persecution, poverty, are still in place. So what we need, Naomi is absolutely right, we need safe and legal routes. That's what all charities and experts are calling for, and we need to speed up processing.
And then when they're processed, if they pass the assessment and they are a legitimate refugee that requires asylum, they stay, and if they don't and they are an illegal immigrant, then they are sent home.
And the vast majority are legitimate.
Camilla?
When we have safe and legal routes, do we put any cap on the numbers of people that we can accept into the UK? Just in terms of the survival of the infrastructure of the UK, how many schools we have, how many doctors and dentists we have, how many hospitals, how many houses we have, not least with burgeoning waiting lists of people already on lists for social housing. So how do we control the numbers if we have safe and legal routes, out of interest?
Well, there would still be controls there.
Oh, so you put a cap on the number of people coming in?
Well, it would be decided on a case-by-case basis in the same way.
Surely you have to at some point say...
If you ask me a question, do you want to just let me finish?
Just a straight answer. Would we put a cap on numbers?
I wouldn't, no.
Right. So
what I'm talking about with safe and legal routes, this isn't an open borders policy.
Sounds like it.
Well, except the numbers, of course, under previous Conservative governments were
legal routes. Under
how many more should we
for
have?
Ukrainians?
Yeah, no. So there were
For example, and we know
okay, so
that
that's an example.
Don't interrupt. Try not to cross over each other, Nadia.
We know that safe and legal routes work because Ukrainians aren't crossing the channel, are they? Because they have safe and legal routes to get here.
There was a cap on the number.
Hang on.
I am saying that we should extend those safe and legal routes to other people who are desperate and who are risking their lives.
And I am
That is how we stop people risking their lives on the channel.
And through
I know
foreign
that
aid,
you're-
and through tackling
Exactly.
climate change.
I can see that you're finding this very
of mass displacement
No,
of people.
I'm finding-
The very people that often
Let
say they
Naomi
don't
speak.
want
Let Naomi
immigration,
speak.
who are concerned about particularly what they call illegal immigration, are often the very same people who call for foreign aid cuts, who don't want to tackle the climate crisis that we've got in front of us, all the reasons that are causing the huge mass displacement of people and an increasing number because of climate change.
Sorry, I'm not
over the
asking a
coming
complicated
decades.
question. I totally understand the argument for
Which bit
safe
don't you get?
and legal routes. The bit I don't get is your inability to give me an answer to whether there should be a cap. When we said we would take Ukrainians, we put a cap on it. When we said we would take people from Hong Kong, we put a cap on it. I asked you whether you would put a cap on numbers, purely because if you have other safe and legal routes, and we feel that the infrastructure of this country might suffer, and not least if people are already waiting on housing lists, that they will be bumped down them if we let everybody into this country.
Well, hang on, Camilla.
I'm really
There's
asking
one
for a
question,
number
but there's
cap.
one question for you on safe and legal routes. Do you think if there were more safe and legal routes, there would be fewer people trying to cross the channel?
Yeah, of course there would.
Right. So you agree with safe and legal routes?
and a cap if you want.
We can have safe and legal routes,
you
but I
agree
think
with
you
safe
have
and legal routes?
Caps don't work.
All right,
Caps don't
well,
work. Theresa
all
May said we need to
But you have
reduce
to
Totally.
net
have to put
migration
a
by
number on it,
100,000.
yeah.
Well, hang on.
But the numbers never get
Hang
cut
on.
to. They don't
The
work.
Conservatives have put
nonsense.
the Conservatives have put numbers, I have to say, on legal migration and have never reached tens of
Exactly.
thousands. Do you still think a number is worthwhile having on an annual cap? This is broadly on immigration because Kemi Badenoch still hasn't come up with one.
We recognise that the tens of thousands was not reached, but if you don't have a cap, if you don't have a number to work to, how do you hold yourself to account? How can you, for example, come and question me
Yeah.
about us not
But you
reaching
breached
our
it. But you
target?
breached it for 14
But there
years.
is an accountability there, and it's something to work to. If you shoot into the dark, i.e. just be like, we will take anyone who comes via whatever route, then how can you control that? How can you manage? How can we say that, for example, infrastructure is going to keep up? We spoke about the foreign aid budget, but so much of that budget is spent on asylum hotels. So this whole thing is such a mess of every straw being pulled has an impact elsewhere. But none of these things are adding up easily. We need to have a robust deterrent in order to stop people coming.
But the deterrent that was tried by previous Conservative governments never came into operation.
No,
and that was the
no,
Rwanda scheme, and it seemed impossible for the governments to actually enact it in the first place. There is an ongoing discussion within the Conservative Party about whether Britain should ignore the judges. We heard there Donald Trump obviously ignoring court orders when it comes to deporting Venezuelans. Do you think Britain should ignore judges when it comes to these sorts of cases?
The most important thing is that we in Britain can control our borders, control our sovereignty, and have control over who is coming to the country and who is important. Because some of the names of the
But you've
people
always
we
had
see,
control.
some of the names of
over
people
who
we
can come.
see coming across the channel are people we do not want here and must be able to deport in order to keep our country safe, our borders safe. And if that means also, you do not agree.
Well, finish your point, and then I come to nudge it. Yeah.
I think it's really important that we can control who's coming here. And if that means that we need to look away from what international courts are telling us versus what we're actually able to control here, then that is something that we need to consider.
All right, because
But
that is what
President
Chris
of the United States is a convicted felon, so let's not be surprised
Having
if
said
he
that,
flouts
The one
a court
president,
order.
the one president who deported more illegal immigrants than any over the course of the
President
last
Obama.
15 years is President Obama.
Yeah,
Well, more than Trump's first term in office, 2.9 million versus 2.2.
But where would you put a cap, Camilla? Which countries would you put a cap on in terms of safe and legal routes? There wasn't a cap. There wasn't
Yeah.
a cap for Ukrainians.
No, there wasn't a cap for Ukrainians, but there was for the Hong Kongers.
There
I'm
might
just
have been.
saying
Although
that
there
I
wasn't
think
a
that
cap for the number of Ukrainians.
I think people, generally the British people, are extremely welcoming to people who are fleeing persecution. But I think equally the British public are extremely concerned that unfortunately we do not have the housing and the infrastructure to cope with safe and legal folk. Well, successive governments now,
Absolutely.
including your own, unfortunately.
And yeah,
We're in.
Personally, I feel as if the UK should ignore these judges because these judges they don't care for the United Kingdom the same way. Like, just a very quick point before I close out the segment. Donald Trump just deported over 100 men to El Salvador because they were in America illegally. And I believe that a lot of them were criminals in the States, and a judge tried to override that decision. And Trump basically said that they were in the air. So what the judge said at the time, was void because, the criminals were on their way to El Salvador. And as soon as they got to El Salvador, Bukele, you know, one of the best presidents in the world, you know, grabbed them and straight away, you know, showed them no mercy. He is cleaning up crime. And that's the way to do it. Bukele of El Salvador. You know, you do it like that. But what I'm trying to say is the judge tried to impede what Trump was trying to do. Deports the criminals back to El Salvador. So sometimes, well, in this situation, now it's getting to a point where it's just insane and we're seeing a lot of unrest socially. I believe that it is smart to ignore a lot of these judges, honestly, because they seem to not care at all and they seem to be super woke. So yeah, but anyway guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like, comment and subscribe and I'll catch you at the next video. Peace.